Kia ora and hello from the Gold Coast of Australia. It's Crystal here, coming to you from the Universal Empath 101, and I'm here to lay down a 30-day empathy awareness. So every day for 30 days I'm going to speak about something to do with empathy and the life we live as empaths, and the current environment in which we're all very much being caught up in, whether we like it or not. How do we go about this? It's day one of this 30-day empathy awareness journey, and for all of us around the world, where we've all, in one way, shape or form, we've been affected by the COVID-19, the coronavirus, and many of our countries have experienced lockdown to some extent. I'm originally from New Zealand, but I live here on the Gold Coast of Australia, and as of a couple of days ago, Melbourne, the city of Melbourne, went into stage 4 lockdown, which New Zealand also held a couple of months ago. And it's a state of a disaster has been called in Melbourne, with some very hard and fast rules that everybody has to stand by, and these are having profound effects on mental wellness, our spiritual wellness, our ability to get out there and do as we all have been doing most of our lives. And what I've seen, which really concerns me, is the impact it's having on empaths and people who have innate empathy, which is really strong natural empathy, and the effects on our emotional energy, our spiritual energy, our physical energy. Like I've spoken to so many people, and we're all going through different levels of how this current environment in which we're all caught up in is affecting us. So physically, feeling constantly drained, spiritually, feeling numb inside, unable to meditate, unable to hold a sense of balance in our lives. Emotionally, getting hammered left, right and center, and that doesn't help with the media, and it's just constantly bombarding every aspect of our lives, not just on TV, but the radio, social media, Google. When you go and search for something, there's always warnings. YouTube, every social media, mainstream social media these days, which is Facebook and YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, they've all got notifications. So it's really hard to tame that media beast that's constantly sending out messages of COVID-19 and the impact that it's having on all of our countries, within the state, the cities that we live in. So it's a really interesting time, extraordinary times that we're living in, to be frank. I've never experienced anything like this, and neither has my dad, and he's in his early 80s, and so we're all having to adapt really rapidly, and think on our feet and act very swiftly with all these new rules that are being brought forward. And pretty much for some of us, we can feel like we feel like we don't have an option. And we live in a democratic society here in Australia, likewise in New Zealand and America and United Kingdom, Canada. Many countries around the world live in a democracy, and that's being questioned, as we feel like we don't have a choice, we don't have a say. Our feelings, we really don't feel like we have anything to any choices, the choices that we've had living in a democracy of freedom of speech, the freedom of rights, have slowly being eroded. And in some countries, that's been a feeling that it's rapidly, our democratic rights are being taken away from us. But anyway, this is not a political post. This is about our sense of freedom, and our sense of having the right to make decisions for what's good for us and our families, for our bodies, for our life, the life that we choose to live. And sadly, it's coming from the top level. So politically, leaders all around the world have had to, make some very extreme decisions. Well, they're extreme for me because I've not ever, in my lifetime, have I ever felt that these decisions, generally would be passed in a parliament and decided collectively with the input of the people. And that's not happening. Many thousands, millions of people around the world are feeling like they don't have a say, and that's creating a division. There are those for and there are those against, and this post is not to defend who is in the right situation, because COVID-19 coronavirus is real, and it's impacting the elderly around the world. It's impacting those who have autoimmune deficiencies, who have compromised immune systems, and it's real. It's causing deaths, and we've had schools shut down, we've had businesses shut down and forced into isolation, families forced into isolation, and there are people out there who are really struggling emotionally, struggling mentally. The impacts are devastating, within our cities. And the biggest impact that I have seen, I have witnessed, is how it's impacting people with innate empathy, those with natural empathy, where we're highly sensitive already and we're getting bombarded with all these amazingly intense emotions. And you've really got to stop and think, what is mine, and whose stuff is this? Is this actually mine, or is this coming from outside of me? And it's impossible to not feel these intense energies building up all around us in our environment. And when you're already highly sensitive to energy, emotional energy, mental energy, physical energy, spiritual energy, let alone the energy that's in our environment, from technology, from machinery, from the weather, so many different kinds of energies. But specifically speaking, here we're talking about the effects of COVID-19 and how that's impacting people with innate empathy. I've spoken to quite a few people through these past months, and witnessed in my own family, witnessed in my own self. There is this need for us to be aware of that which we feel. Are these emotions mine? What am I feeling? Being able to identify, because we're all experiencing confusion, because 1 minute the media is saying we have to do this, we have to wear masks, you don't need to wear masks, and these are the reasons why you should wear masks, and these are the reasons why you shouldn't wear masks, and each to their own. You've got to go with what intuitively feels right to you. We don't want to go out there and break laws, but at the same time, there's a lot of confusion, mixed messages coming from the media, coming from hierarchy, the politicians, the prime ministers and presidents that are leading our countries, and the WHO, the World Health Organization, the CDC, the FDA, the TBA in Australia, and we're all trying to decipher, what do we do, how do we do it, making, choices, for our families, and there is a lot of fear, and that fear is crippling, highly sensitive people who are strong empaths, are feeling a lot of really mixed emotions, and fear is right at the top of this roller coaster ride, so it's important to acknowledge, is the fear that you're feeling yours, or is that feeling of fear coming from loved ones, from family, from friends? Is it extending further? Is it within your community? Is it extending beyond your community to the city in which you live in? Or is it fear that's running through your state? Is it fear that's running through your country? Can you identify that? Can you really go into it and say, where is this fear originating from? And can you honestly assess within yourself, is this fear mine? Is it my husband's, or is it my son or my daughter? Is it my daughter-in-law? Is it my children? Is it my grandchildren? Is this fear coming from conversations that I'm having with friends and family outside of your home? Is this fear, something that you feel every single time you turn on the TV and you watch the news, or you listen to the radio and you're hearing the latest broadcast of how many deaths are happening and how many people are being diagnosed with COVID-19, and how do you feel when you watch that, when you hear these things, and can you identify that fear, and then go into it in deeper, like dive deep into that fear and actually ask yourself, what is this fear feeling like inside of me? It's making me, you need to get descriptive. You need to really go inside and get familiar with that fear. And that can sound like frightening, because we're talking about getting to know the fear. And that fear holds certain energies. It holds a frequency within inside of you. So you need to know, what is that frequency? What is it picking up? What does that fear consist of? Is it making you feel anxious? Is it making you feel nervous to make decisions? Is it making you feel confused to make decisions? Is that fear leaving a horrible feeling in the pit of your stomach? That it makes you want to cry, or makes you feel really stressed, really down. You've got to go into that. We all have to go into that. In order to get in control of our empathy, we need to know, what am I feeling? What is this energy that's holding me in this space? Because until we do that, we can't get out of it. We can't move beyond the energy of fear until we identify, how does it hold us? What space is it holding in us? Because for many people, for many empaths throughout the world, that fear has been holding us in a space for months, not just days, not weeks, but months. I mean, lockdown first happened here in Australia back in March, so that's a long time, to be swimming around in such an intense emotion. So yeah, we need to go inside and identify, what does fear mean to me, to Crystal, to you, and swim with that, dive deep into the fear, and acknowledge everything that it makes you feel. Does it make you want to break out in a sweat? Does it give you the chills? Does it make you feel angry and hurt, and a sense of feeling lost? Name it, describe it, go into that fear, acknowledge it. And when you feel like you're really gone into the depths of that particular emotional energy, fear, thank it, I thank fear for allowing me to understand how I feel, and it's okay for me to feel this fear now, and I let it go. I send that fear into the ethers of love, and I release it from me, and I release it with love. But you can't go to that place until you take the time to really acknowledge what you're feeling. So, when you go through the fear, what else are you feeling? Are you feeling anger? Go into the anger, dive deep into the anger. Why are you angry? Are you angry because you feel like you have no control of your life anymore? You feel like, there's a sense of uncertainty, and it's frustrating you that you don't know what the future holds. You don't know what the present holds. Go into that and acknowledge it, and then move into the next emotion. And we've been all experiencing a myriad of emotions, and that's understandable. It's understandable. There's so much chaos going on in the world right now, and it's pulling a lot of people down. It's making people feel, depressed, suicidal, scared, really scared. Like, the other day, there's some big censorship happening on social media, on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and YouTube and Google, and that's, for me, that's quite frightening, because and I admit the other day that I'm actually feeling quite scared about this whole censorship, because the freedom of voice, the freedom of speech is being stifled, and that's really concerning for me, because I've raised my boys with empathy awareness, to embrace the empath within, and to be able to speak up and express how they feel, and and I stop and drop and I roll for my family and for friends and for people that come in my life, and I give them that undivided attention, and I listen, which is a huge part of what our life is like. Being an empath is, the listening skills. And there is nothing worse, when you're an empath and you're trying to express yourself to somebody that, you really want them to hear you, and you feel that sense of, I don't feel heard. I don't feel like they're listening, so, and that's how many of us are feeling now. We don't feel that we're being heard, that our concerns about what's going on in the world and what's going on in the environment cannot be expressed. So our voices are being stifled, and how is that affecting us, when we can't, we're having to watch our P's and Q's, what we're saying on Facebook, on social media, because some things I disagree with, some things I agree with, and, if I speak up and say something about it, and I appear to be going against the grain, it's I can expect a backlash. I can expect criticism from family, from friends. Everybody's got an opinion, and for me personally, I've always been a seeker of the truth, and that's a really common trait for empaths to actually have, to be seekers of the truth. We are constantly seeking where we fit in the world, where do we fit in our environment, and what is meaning for us, meaningful. A sense of, it gives us that sense of balance, that sense of belonging, and all of these things that are important to an empath are being stripped from us. And I've not ever, in all the years I've been on social media, since, way back in the beginning with MSN and Yahoo, I've never seen the stifling of humanity as I have this year, and most especially in the recent weeks where censorship has become commonplace. You know, websites are being pulled down, posts are being pulled down, fact-checking, so many things about conspiracy theorists, and, each to their own, but are we getting the opportunity to, to talk openly and freely as we once were just months ago? No, we're not, and that's really hard when you're so sensitive, because you're an empath, so you're sensitive to your emotions, you're sensitive to the emotions and thought energy of others around you, you're sensitive to your environment, you're sensitive to what's going on in your country, and you're also sensitive to what's going on in the world. But what we are experiencing is we are being separated, from our families, from our loved ones. I mean, in lockdown here on the Gold Coast, my son and his beautiful daughter-in-law live just 5 minutes away from us, with their our two granddaughters, and through that lockdown we couldn't see one another. So, I get that there is a pandemic, and I get that, there are vulnerable people out there, that we all need to be conscious of their safety and their well-being and their health, our elderly, the people that have compromised immune systems. We've got to have that sort of conscious awareness and for them. And if you're strong and you're healthy, we've got to, do the right thing by our family, by our friends, and by our community, and by our countries, and by the world, because I can't even fly back to New Zealand right now. There's quarantine in countries, where there are COVID-19, breakouts in different cities and towns. We have to be conscious, so we can't fly back to our countries of origin without going into quarantine for 14 days. And I totally respect that, I get that. And, we've just recently shut down the borders between New South Wales and the state of Queensland. That just happened on Friday, and trying to get my son up and his beautiful wife to get up here for her work, and they had less than 30 hours to plan that. So for me, throughout the whole lockdown period, my concerns for my family were significant. They were huge. Wanting my 4 sons and their families, their partners, their wives here in the state in Queensland, so we can be close to one another, was a very worrying time, and it still is, because we've recently had an outbreak here in Queensland. The state of Queensland has been in lockdown for months now, since March, and is still refusing to open its borders to other states. And New Zealand's done the same, and different countries around the world have done the same. But that effect on our empathy is really playing havoc. The fear, is my family safe? The uncertainty of what the future holds for my adult children, my grandchildren. It's made me feel scared at times, and I acknowledge it, I acknowledge, and I say it out aloud to my family, I'm scared, I'm really scared, we're being censored now, we can't speak to one another, we've got to watch what we say, we can't come across on social media as going against the grain, we're not allowed to have freedom of speech, we're not allowed to have to speak our voices clearly, and that's concerning, let alone the impact it's having on our emotional energy. And that emotional energy going untapped affects our physical energy, so we start to feel really drained, and our body is just like dragged. We feel at times it's hard to get out of bed, when you're in lockdown, and there's so much protesting going on in the world, and in America, you know, there's a lot going on over there with the Black Lives Matter, let alone with COVID-19 and vaccinations, and there's a lot of protesting. There's protesting happening throughout Australia, and a worry, you know, there's a lot of worry. There's a lot of people that want their voice to be heard and who feel like they have no say in the matter. You know, what I've seen, you know, the effects on businesses, small businesses, medium businesses. If you're not an essential business, you know, you're down, you've been shut down, and you know what effects this is having on our economies. You know, it is a worrying time. Excuse me, don't cough when you're on social media. But I'm just sitting outside here in my backyard, and yeah, I mean, you can hear the traffic in the back, and through lockdown, it was pure silence. You know, you could hear the birds tweeting, you could hear the water lapping on the shore here. And now we've got traffic moving again, and, you know, people picking up business, and yet in the city of Melbourne, the state of Melbourne, state of Victoria in Melbourne City, they're in complete lockdown stage 4, which means very excessive rules. You know, they've got to be home by 8 p.m. To 5 a.m. in the morning. They're not allowed to go 5 kilometers away from their homes. They can only do exercise for 1 hour. Yeah, there is, you know, many limitations, and, you know, only one person can go shopping. They've had a huge outbreak of the COVID-19 down there. And I feel for all the people in the state of Victoria. It was hard enough to go through lockdown once, let alone to go through it a second time. There are 2 cities in the state of New South Wales that have also been in lockdown because they've had some COVID-19 breakouts there. We recently had a situation where a couple of young 19-year-olds flew from Melbourne to Sydney, up to Queensland and to Brisbane, and for 8 days they were walking around from shopping centre to another shopping centre to a restaurant, and they have COVID-19. So, you know, Queensland's been really strong in keeping their borders shut and protecting the people here. But I mean, that's caused a whole lot of fear again, and, you know, businesses that have only just gone back to work are now wondering if they're next to be shut down. Some shops and some restaurants have been closed here in Queensland, where those 2 girls were known to have gone to. Tracking, you know, the tracking for the virus, and knowing where you've been and who you've gone to visit, and, you know, that's concerning a lot of people. And forced vaccinations potentially sitting in, you know, in the near future, and there are people who are for vaccinations and people who are against. I'm not here to say who's right and who's wrong, and whose concerns are more important than the other. It's the freedom of speech, the freedom of choice. This is my body and what is good for my body, you know, and having that taken away from me. And I have my own reasons, you know, my own sensitivities to, you know, medication, and why I choose my path, and for my family too. And we all have that ability to make those choices, and that's being questioned this year. So it's coming with a massive divide in empathy around the world. There is really hateful things being said. There's a lack of compassion, a lack of love, a lack of consideration. There's so much judgment being put out there around the world, and it's really quite vicious, you know. People are saying things and they're being attacked on social media platforms all around the world. You know, you're then considered that you're with this political party or you're with that political party. But it's just purely just being in our own mind and our own intention, you know, that is being questioned, our own free will that is being questioned, and that's affecting a lot of people. You know, a lot of empaths are feeling really drained, really afraid of what the future holds and questioning that. So, you know, it's about standing in our own power, and what that means is to stand in our truth, our own truth. But that's been completely laid bare on the table this year in 2020. We're not feeling like we really have that ability to stand in our own power. So there's this sense of knowing that empaths have, and it's an unwavering knowing. You know, when something is happening and you just have this really strong knowing of what you need to do, or you know what is the right thing, and it's supported by, you know, that intuitive voice. That knowing, you know, is often backed up by an intuitive voice within us. For me, in my Māori culture from Aotearoa, New Zealand, that voice is the voice of my ancestors, the voice of my tupuna. And I've been guided by that ever since I was a child. It's not ever led me astray, ever. For you, that intuitive voice might be your ancestors. It might be a great-grandparent that passed away that's a real strong influence and support in your life. It might be the creator, the universe, that's guiding you, you know. And when we feel like that intuitive voice is being stifled, it then opens up a mental, like we go into the mind, and the mind will just consume that intuition, that intuitive voice. It'll gobble it up, spit it out. It'll overthink things. It will make you feel stressed. It'll make you feel anxious, even to the point that you start to feel depressed. You don't want to get out of bed. You know, so how do you overcome that that feeling that my voice is not being heard, that I cannot express myself? Because empaths are really, we are expressive beings. You know, we express how we feel in any given time. If anybody is willing to listen to us, let alone ourselves, you know, we are emotionally intuitive. And that means we, you know, for those people that have really strong empathy, you're not afraid to go and dive deep and acknowledge that which you feel, you know. And when you do that, the more that you do that, acknowledge in any given moment, you know, every single day, you know, when something impacts you and hits you, go into yourself, go within and seek to understand what that emotion is teaching you. And is that emotion supported by other emotions? What are they? As you do that more frequently, you have that emotional awareness, that empathy awareness, that empath awareness. It becomes less impactful, and you can identify it a lot more faster. And go, yeah, okay, that makes me feel really afraid. You know, that particular statement makes me feel afraid. Why does it make me feel afraid? Oh gosh, because I don't feel like I have any control over my life. I don't feel like I have a say over my life. I'm worried about what the future consists of. Just break it down, break it down, break it down, until you can go no further, until you feel like you've come to the end of that deep dive into that emotion or emotions that are supporting it, backing it up. When you do that, it immediately eases the intensity of that energy. That frequency becomes, you know, less loud, literally. Excuse me. I should have brought a glass of water out here, but no, I didn't. And so anyway, break it down, and you'll find that it has less impact the next time around, and it will come around, but it just won't hold you. And if it does, then it means there's more for you to dive deep into. What have you missed? You know, is there something specific about the fear that you have not yet identified? If it keeps coming up, it's coming up for a reason. There is something missing that you haven't acknowledged yet about the energy of fear, about the energy of anxiety. What is its origin? Where did it start? You know, where is it taking you? And where does it end? It ends when you say so, when you acknowledge that. So, basically, we're in a time when we need to stand in our own power, and that is a massive challenge when you consider the feeling of not being able to do so, the feeling of not being able to stand in your own power because outside forces are dictating to you. The power belongs to them. And that's a really hard thing for intuitive people, for people who are natural born empaths, to actually just turn a blind eye to, you know, to turn around and walk away from, because you've always had this sense of knowing what is right, what is wrong, what feels right to you, what feels wrong to you. We have that innately embedded within us. Those little alarm bells will protect us, will hold us in good stead, hold us in our power. So that's what we've got to do. We've got to hold on to and be conscious, be aware of standing in our own power in these extraordinarily remarkable times that we are living in right now. And for how long this will go on for, who knows? You know, but what's important is standing in our power, people. You know, you're out there, and we can do that together, and we can do that by sharing our awareness, what's helping us. So please feel welcome to leave a comment. If there's anything else you would like clarity on this particular topic. So for the next 30 days, I'm going to be bringing up another topic that we can, that's really important in these times, and work on this together, and, you know, making sure that we allow our empathy to flow, not just within ourselves, within our families and our friends, but how we can do that beyond, like in our country, you know, in the states that we live in the world that we live in, and how we can hold that space of empathy for each other and for the world. And we must start within ourselves. And then we'll broaden it, we'll extend it beyond us, because we're used to doing that naturally. But through these very challenging times, that's really being suppressed. And this is the point of these, you know, the 30-day empath awareness is to reclaim that and hold on to it. It's a matter, it's going to be our ultimate survival tool to get us through this. So thank you for being here, and if there is any specific topic that you would love to talk about, please post it in the comments below, and let's go through this together, and let's get through this. So all power to you, you know, all power to each other, and yeah, let's hope that this situation that we're all experiencing ends sooner rather than later. But until then, you know, let's keep that awareness alive, you know, that empath awareness alive, because we are dependent on it. So thank you for joining me, and we'll be back tomorrow and get into the 29th topic, which I'm yet to figure out. So thank you for joining me. Have a lovely day wherever you are, or a lovely evening, and